The forest was quiet in a way that felt almost unreal. The film crew had been working since early morning, and most people were exhausted, but the air still carried a strange kind of energy. It was the kind of place where every sound echoed. Every step on the ground felt like it carried history. The trees stood tall like silent witnesses, as if they had seen thousands of stories before this one and were now waiting for the next one to unfold. Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock had worked together many times before, but this project felt different. It was not a commercial film or a high-budget action movie. It was something personal, a quiet, emotional story about empathy and the unseen bond between humans and nature. The director wanted everything to feel real, so he refused to shoot in studios. No green screens, no fake forests. Everything had to be natural, untouched, alive. The cameras were set. The crew was ready. The sound of a distant generator hummed somewhere behind the trees. The air smelled like fresh leaves and wet soil. Sandra stood in front of a small cabin that was built just for the scene. Keanu was a few steps away, going over his lines in his head, calm and focused the way he always was. He never rushed. He never showed stress even when everyone else did. It was one of the reasons people respected him so much. But no one knew that this day would become the most unforgettable moment of the entire shoot. Not because of the film, not because of any dramatic scene, but because of something real, something unexpected, something no one planned, something that would reveal a side of Keanu that even Sandra had never seen before. The scene they were about to shoot was a heavy one. Sandra had to cry on camera, and Keanu had to comfort her with a quiet, emotional speech. No dramatic action, no fake intensity. Just simple, raw human emotion, the director whispered, ready to call action. And then it happened. A sound came from behind the trees. Not a bird, not a branch breaking. Something else. Something alive. Something heavy. The crew turned their heads, confused but not afraid. At first, no one reacted. But then the sound grew louder. Leaves moved. Bushes shook. Someone from the crew gasped. A few people backed away. The director raised his hand, thinking it was a wild boar or maybe a stray dog from the nearby village, but it was not a boar. It was a wolf, not a healthy one, not a strong one, an injured wolf. Its fur was dirty, tangled with pieces of dry grass. One of its legs dragged behind, bleeding slightly. Its breathing was rough, uneven, painful, and its eyes were not fierce like a predator. They were confused, scared, desperate. For a moment, no one moved. The cameras kept rolling even though no one had time to notice. Fear spread through the crew like a silent wave. One person dropped a microphone. Someone whispered, "Oh my God!" Another person yelled, "Back away!" Sandra froze. She was not scared for herself, but she had never seen a wolf this close. No cage, no trainer, no protection. And then, without thinking, Keanu stepped forward. He did not run. He did not scream. He did not look for help. He simply walked in front of Sandra and stood between her and the wolf. No hesitation. No fear in his eyes. His body moved faster than his mind. It was instinct. Pure instinct, like he had trained all his life for this moment without even knowing it. The crew tried to stop him. Someone shouted, "Keanu, no!" Another said, "Stay back!" But Keanu did not listen. His voice was calm, steady, almost gentle. "Nobody move," he said softly. "Don't scare it." Even the wolf paused, its breathing still heavy, its legs shaking. But something in Keanu's presence made it stop, almost like it remembered something, even though no one else understood what was happening. Sandra watched quietly. Her heart was beating hard. She knew Keanu was kind. She had seen him do good things. But this was different. This was not kindness in a controlled space. This was kindness in danger, a real moment, a real risk. Something most people only talk about but never show when it matters. Keanu slowly knelt down, lowering his body so he would not look like a threat. He did not reach out. He did not make sudden moves. He just spoke. "You're hurt," he said softly. "You don't want to hurt us. You just want to survive." "I get it." The wolf blinked. Its ears twitched. The atmosphere changed. The fear in the air turned into something else. Something like respect. Something like a forgotten connection. But the crew did not understand. Someone whispered, "He is crazy!" Another said, "This could go wrong." The director was frozen. Even Sandra felt helpless. She wanted to run to him, but something told her not to move. She trusted him more than she trusted her own fear. The wolf lowered its head and collapsed on the ground. Weak, exhausted, breathing slowly. Keanu moved closer, still calm, still unafraid. That was when the old forest ranger arrived. He had been called by the production team earlier in the morning for safety supervision, but he reached late. When he saw the wolf, his face changed, not because of the animal, but because of Keanu. He stared at him for a long moment, almost in disbelief, and then said quietly, "I have seen this before." Everyone turned toward him. Sandra asked, "What do you mean?" The ranger took a slow breath. "Years ago," he said, "a young man used to come to the forest rescue shelter nearby. He did not want his name shared. He helped injured animals, cleaned them, stayed with them for days. One of the animals he rescued was an orphaned wolf cub, abandoned and starving. He fed it, protected it, slept beside it so it would not feel alone. The cub healed and was released. The man never came back." The crew listened, confused. The ranger continued. "The records never showed his real name. He signed every log with one word." He paused, then said slowly, "Human." The whole set went silent. The ranger turned and looked at Keanu. "I remember your face now," he said softly. "You were that man?" Sandra's eyes widened. The crew stared. Keanu did not speak. His silence was the answer. The injured wolf on the ground did not come here by accident. It was not a threat. It was a living memory. A creature that had once been saved by the same hands now standing in front of it again after all these years. The crew did not know what to feel. Shock, respect, disbelief. Everything mixed into one. Sandra felt something deeper. Something human. Something rare, she whispered to herself. He wasn't protecting me from a wolf. He was protecting a friend. The ranger crouched beside the wolf and touched its fur gently. "It came back because some bonds never break," he said. "Even when years pass, even when no one talks about it," Keanu finally spoke softly. "No act of kindness is ever lost. Not even in the wild. There were no cameras needed anymore. The moment itself was a film. Real, unedited, unforgettable." The crew slowly gathered around, no longer afraid. Someone called for water. Someone else called a vet. Sandra stood beside Keanu, her voice shaking, not from fear but from emotion. "Why didn't you ever tell anyone?" she asked. Keanu gave a small, quiet smile. "Because kindness is not a story," he said. "It's a responsibility." And those words landed heavier than any line in any script. Behind them, the wolf continued breathing, not angry, not dangerous, just alive and trusting again. And for the first time, everyone saw what real heroism looked like. Not loud, not staged, not performed, just done in silence with heart. And that was only the beginning. The forest felt different after the wolf collapsed. The energy on set had shifted from fear to an overwhelming silence filled with questions no one dared to ask out loud. People moved slowly, like every step might break the moment. The cameras were no longer important. The movie scene was forgotten. Everyone was watching something far more real than anything a script could create. The ranger took control and asked the crew to give space. He checked the wolf carefully. The animal was weak, dehydrated, and its injured leg looked like it had been caught in a trap days earlier. The crew whispered quietly among themselves, trying to understand what they were witnessing. But Sandra stayed close to Keanu, studying him the way people study a mystery they suddenly realize has been living beside them for years. She was still processing what the ranger revealed. She wanted to ask so many questions, yet she did not want to disturb the way Keanu sat there in complete calm, watching over the wolf like it was more than just an animal, like it was a memory, like it was a reflection of something he had lost and found again. Without expecting it, the director finally walked up to Keanu and spoke in a soft voice. "We can stop filming for today if you want," he said. Keanu shook his head gently. "No," he replied. "Life does not stop when something unexpected happens. It just teaches us what really matters." His tone was not heavy, not dramatic, just honest. Sandra felt a strange ache in her chest. She had known Keanu for many years. They had shared screens, conversations, late-night laughs, and long breaks on set. But at that moment, she realized she never truly knew him. Not the quiet part. Not the part that helped animals alone in a forest and never told a soul. Not the part who signed forms with one word, human. Not the part who chose action over applause. She sat beside him, still shaken but calm, and asked the question that had been sitting in her heart. "Why did you do it back then?" she said. "All those years ago. Helping the cub. No one knew you. No one would have cared if you walked away." Keanu looked at the ground for a moment as if the answer was buried in the soil. "Because something helped me once when no one knew me either," he said. "Not a person, not an animal. Just a moment of kindness that came when I needed it, and I felt like I owed that feeling back to the world." Sandra watched him carefully. "You never wanted people to know?" she said. "I did not help the wolf to be remembered," Keanu replied. "I helped it because no one else was there." The ranger lifted his head and nodded in agreement. "He was one of the only volunteers who never signed a real name," he said. "No fame. No pictures, no credit. People like that are rare." Keanu stared at the wolf again. "Rare does not matter," he said quietly. "Necessary does." The vet finally arrived, carrying a medical kit and a stretcher. Everyone stepped back to give room. The wolf was lifted carefully. It made a soft sound, not aggressive, not fearful, more like a tired sigh of relief. Keanu stood up and placed a hand gently on its back, almost like a silent promise. The vet smiled. "This animal trusts you," he said. "That does not happen by accident." Keanu did not answer. He just nodded and walked beside the stretcher as they carried the wolf to the van, waiting at the edge of the forest trail. Sandra followed, never taking her eyes off him. The rest of the crew watched as if they were seeing a scene that would stay with them forever. No script, no retakes, no director. Just one man, one choice, and one act of kindness that was louder than any speech. By the time the vet van drove away, the sun was lower in the sky. The team slowly returned to the set, but no one spoke about the scene they were supposed to film. The real scene had already happened, and it would stay in their minds long after the movie ended. The director finally called a break. People scattered, some pretending to work just to have something to do, others sitting quietly, thinking. Sandra stayed with Keanu. She felt like something unfinished was still hanging between them. She waited until they were alone near the cabin wall, and then she asked the question she could no longer hold back. "Keanu," she said, "was that the only animal you ever helped?" He paused. The kind of pause that does not come from hesitation, but from deciding how much truth to reveal. "No," he finally said. "There were many. Not just wolves, dogs, birds, even a horse once. The forest rescue shelter was not a place. It was more like a reminder. Every time I felt lost in life, I went there to fix something that could not fix itself." Sandra's eyes softened. "And you told no one?" "Telling would change the reason," he replied. "Kindness is not a performance," she understood. Not completely, but enough. They sat in silence again, not uncomfortable silence. A silence that respected what had happened. A silence that carried weight. After some time, the ranger approached them again. He stood with a quiet smile. "I should tell you something," he said. "The cub you rescued years ago, it never bonded with anyone else. It stayed wild, but never attacked a human. It used to come near the shelter and leave again, like it was looking for someone." He looked at Keanu and added, "Maybe it was looking for you." Sandra felt her throat tighten. Keanu just looked down, breathing slowly. The ranger continued, "And today, it came back to the same place it was first saved. Maybe not by accident," Sandra whispered. "It remembered him." The ranger nodded. "Sometimes humans forget kindness, but animals do not." Keanu closed his eyes for a moment. Not sad, not proud, just present. "I did not expect to see it again," he said. "But maybe life circles back when it needs to show us something." Sandra leaned forward. "And what is it showing you?" Keanu replied softly. "That kindness is not finished just because time passes. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it returns. Sometimes it reminds you of who you used to be." That line sank into the air like a slow echo. The forest wind moved the leaves gently, It felt like even nature was listening. After a long pause, Sandra spoke again. "Can I ask something personal?" she said. Keanu nodded. "Why did you risk yourself like that? You did not know if the wolf would attack, but you still walked toward it." Keanu did not hesitate. "Because fear makes people forget empathy," he said, and I did not want to forget. His answer was simple, but it hit deep. The ranger smiled again, then walked away to let them talk. The crew was still scattered, but the energy had changed. People were quieter, softer, more aware. Sandra sat back and realized something she had never really accepted until now. Fame had made them both admired. Movies had made them both remembered. But it was not fame that created respect. It was the way a person behaved when no one was watching, and she thought, that is why people love him, not for the movies, not for the image, but for the invisible choices he makes when there is no reward. She looked at him again and said gently, "You did not stand in front of me today to protect a celebrity." Keanu turned to her, his eyes calm. "I did not stand in front of you to protect a celebrity," he said. "I stood in front of a person," she smiled. Not a happy smile. A grateful one, the kind that holds emotion without needing tears. Time passed. The crew slowly resumed preparations. Sunset was getting closer. The director wanted to try shooting again, but no one was sure the moment could be rebuilt. Some things cannot be recreated. They just become memory. But the story was not over. The wolf was taken to the rescue center. It would take days to heal, maybe weeks, maybe months. And Sandra noticed something when she looked at Keanu. There was a quiet storm in him, not sadness, not fear. Something deeper, something waiting. She knew there was still a part of the story missing, a part he had not spoken yet. And when the truth finally came out, it would shock everyone in a way, even bigger than the wolf returning, because the real twist was not about an animal remembering kindness. It was about a human remembering something he had hidden even from himself. And soon, Sandra would be the one to uncover it. The night settled over the forest like a slow blanket, but no one on set felt tired. The day had been too heavy, too strange, too full of silent questions. The crew packed equipment quietly, speaking in soft voices, as if the trees themselves were listening. No one joked, no one complained. Even the sound guy who always talked too much stayed silent. Something about the whole experience made everyone feel smaller and more aware of the world around them. Keanu stayed behind after everyone began heading back toward the vans. He stood near the same spot where the wolf had collapsed, staring at the ground as if the moment was still happening in front of him. Sandra watched him from a distance for a while, unsure if she should interrupt or let him think. But her heart kept telling her that he did not need space. He needed someone who was not afraid to sit with his silence. So she walked toward him. She did not say his name. She did not ask if he was okay. She just stood beside him, matching his quietness, letting him decide when to speak. After a while, Keanu took a slow breath and said, "I did not expect it to be that same wolf," Sandra replied gently. "You knew the moment you saw it, didn't you?" He nodded. Something in its eyes, something familiar, even after all these years. Then he paused and added, "I thought animals forget faster than humans. Turns out I was wrong." Sandra looked at him, studying his face in the fading light. "You've carried this for a long time," she said. "Not the wolf, the feeling." Keanu did not deny it. "Kindness is not heavy," he said softly. "But regret is," Sandra frowned. "Regret? Regret about what?" Keanu looked down at his hands, then at the empty space where the wolf had been. "I saved it," he said slowly. "But I never stayed long enough to see what happened next. I told myself it was better to let it live free. But a part of me always wondered if it ever survived. Or if my help was not enough." Sandra listened in silence. She understood. Not the wolf part, the human part. The part that wonders if a good deed was only half done. She spoke softly. "You helped it live. That matters." Keanu shook his head slightly. "I gave it a chance. But I walked away before it healed completely. Sometimes I think I only did half the job." That line hit something deep in Sandra. Not about animals, about people, about how often humans do one good thing and expect life to take care of the rest. She looked at him and said, "Nobody can fix everything, but showing up when it matters, That is the rare part. Keanu turned his head slightly, and for a second she saw a kind of sadness in him she had never noticed before. A sadness that did not come from failure, but from caring too much in a world that often cares too little. The two of them walked back slowly toward the campfire area where some crew members were eating. The forest ranger sat nearby, talking with the director about the rescue center. When he saw Keanu and Sandra, he waved them over. "They took the wolf in," the ranger said. "The vet says it will make it if the infection hasn't spread too far, but it will need long care. Maybe months." Keanu nodded. "I can sponsor the treatment. Whatever they need." The ranger gave a small smile. "I already knew you would say that." Sandra sat down next to the fire, resting her arms around her knees. "Is it the same place you worked at back then?" The ranger nodded. "Not much has changed. The building is old. The funding is small, but the animals still come, and a few people still show up to help." Keanu looked into the fire and said quietly, "I should have gone back sooner." The ranger tilted his head. "Maybe life brought you back now because this time something bigger needs to be healed." Sandra felt that line sit in the air like a message. The ranger continued, "You saved that animal twice now, once in the past, once today. But maybe this story is not only about the wolf. Maybe it is about something you left unfinished." Keanu looked at him, curious. "Unfinished?" The ranger nodded. "When people leave something behind with a good heart, the world finds a way to return it to them. Not as a memory, as a reminder." Sandra watched Keanu carefully. She could tell that whatever the ranger was talking about, Keanu already understood. But Sandra didn't. Not yet. After the crew finished eating, everyone packed up to leave the forest. There was no music, no laughter, just quiet footsteps and deep thinking. Nature had humbled them in a way technology never could. On the ride back to the hotel, Sandra sat next to Keanu. The van was dim and quiet, the road long and winding. After a while, she finally spoke. "Keanu," she said softly, "can I ask you something personal again?" He glanced at her calmly. "You can ask anything." She hesitated, trying to choose the right words. "When you helped that wolf all those years ago, were you doing it because you love nature, or were you escaping something inside yourself?" Keanu did not answer immediately. The silence stretched, not heavy, but meaningful. Finally, he said, "Both." Sandra waited. He continued, "I was younger then, not famous, not stable, not even sure who I was or where I was going. I helped those animals because they needed help, but also because seeing them survive made me believe I could too." Sandra felt a slow ache inside her. She never imagined the quiet, patient man she knew had once been searching for direction, the same way wounded animals searched for shelter. She whispered, "So saving them was also saving you?" Keanu nodded slowly. "Maybe I was trying to prove that broken things still deserved a chance, including myself." That line stayed with her. It did not sound like a quote. It sounded like something carved inside him. The van kept moving. Streetlights passed like slow signals in the dark. After a long pause, Sandra spoke again. "Can I ask one more thing?" Keanu smiled gently. "You are not out of questions, are you?" She smiled back. "Not even close," he nodded. "Go on." She looked at him carefully. "You did not hesitate today?" "Not even for a second. Not even for your own safety. Why?" Keanu stared ahead, thinking. "Because kindness is not thinking," he said. "It is choosing without calculation. And if you stop to calculate, you lose the moment forever." Sandra closed her eyes for a second. That sentence alone felt like a lesson she would remember for the rest of her life. When they reached the hotel, most crew members went straight to their rooms. No one wanted to talk. Everyone wanted to think. Something had changed, not just on the set, but in the people. They had seen something more real than fame, scripts, or applause. Sandra walked toward her room, but before she entered, she turned back and called out to Keanu. "You are going to visit the rescue center tomorrow, aren't you?" Keanu stopped walking, turned, and nodded. "Yes," he said. "I have to." She looked at him with soft certainty. "I am coming with you." He did not argue. He did not ask why. He just nodded again because deep down they both knew something was waiting. There, not an animal, not a memory, not a past. Something. That would reveal the truth behind why the wolf came back, and why the story was not just about kindness, but about something Keanu had buried for years. Something Sandra was finally ready to uncover. The morning arrived slower than usual. The sky was pale, the air still cold, and the hotel hallways were almost silent when Sandra walked out of her room. She expected the usual sounds of a film crew getting ready, people rushing with coffee cups, phones ringing, directions being shouted. But today there was none of that. It was as if everyone was moving with more care, as if yesterday had slowed down something inside them. Keanu was already in the lobby, sitting alone on a small couch near the window. He was wearing a simple black jacket, nothing fancy, nothing that made him look like a famous actor. Just a quiet man waiting for something that mattered more than fame. When he noticed Sandra, he gave her a soft nod. No words needed. She sat beside him. They did not speak during the entire car ride to the rescue center. The silence between them did not feel empty. It felt like something was building. Something both of them sensed, but neither wanted to ruin by speaking too soon. The road was narrow and surrounded by tall trees. Every few minutes, the sunlight broke through, creating small patches of gold on the dirt road. The farther they drove, the more the world seemed to pull away from noise, ego, and attention. It felt like stepping into a place where human stories were smaller and nature was the one telling the truth. The rescue center was nothing like Sandra imagined. It was simple, almost hidden. An old wooden gate, a single small building, a wired fence, and a large open field with cages, tools, medicine boxes, and worn-out signs. There were no big boards, no donors' names, no sponsors' banners. It was a place that survived, not a place that tried to impress anyone. An elderly woman walked out to greet them. Her hair was gray, her hands rough from years of work, and her smile was the kind that came from carrying both love and sadness long enough to respect both. She looked at Keanu and her eyes softened. "You came back," she said. Keanu bowed his head slightly. "It took me longer than it should have." She nodded with understanding. "Life takes people away, but kindness brings them back." She led them inside, and Sandra felt the air change the moment she entered. The room smelled of medicine and hay, old wood and disinfectant. There were photos on the wall of animals that had once been rescued. Sandra slowed her steps when she saw one picture that stood out. A young wolf cub with bright eyes, wrapped in a blanket, lying beside a man whose face was turned away from the camera. The old woman noticed her staring. "That was the cub," she said. "The one he helped." Sandra looked at Keanu. "You never even faced the camera," she said softly. "I was not here to be seen," he answered. The woman smiled a little. "He was always like that." She walked them to the back room where the wolf was being treated. The animal lay on a soft blanket inside a small enclosure, its leg now bandaged, breathing slow but steady. When Keanu stepped closer, the wolf opened its eyes, tired but aware. Its head lifted slightly, and for a long moment, nothing in the room existed except the two of them. No camera could have captured what passed between them. Not fear, not danger. Something deeper. Recognition. Keanu knelt, just like he did years ago, his voice low and gentle. "You made it," he whispered. The wolf blinked slowly. No growl, no panic, only trust. Sandra stood behind him, watching the scene, feeling something inside her shift. This was not just a story about a rescued animal. It was something else. Something she still didn't understand, but she could feel it forming. The old woman spoke softly. "Animals never forget the hands that saved them. They forget pain, but not kindness." Keanu kept looking at the wolf, as if the world outside the room did not exist anymore. "I should have come back sooner," he said quietly. The old woman placed a hand on his shoulder. "You came when it returned. That means something." Sandra suddenly noticed something in the room. A wooden box on a shelf, covered in dust but carefully preserved. She walked toward it, curious, but she did not touch it. She only looked at it, waiting for someone to explain. The old woman noticed. "That box belongs to him," she said, pointing at Keanu. Sandra turned in surprise. "His?" The woman nodded. "He left it here. Many years ago, said he would return one day. We kept it safe. Keanu's face changed. Not shocked, not afraid. Something softer. Something like a memory rising after being buried for too long. The woman took the box and placed it gently in front of him. We never opened it, she said. We knew it was not ours to open. Keanu lifted the box slowly. It was light, but it felt heavier than anything he had carried in years. He did not open it immediately. He just stared at it. Sandra stepped closer. Keanu, what is inside? He took a deep breath. A part of my past, he said. One I did not want to face. Finally opened the lid. Sandra leaned slightly forward. Inside the box were things no one expected, not money, not trophies, not fame, just simple things. A small worn-out journal, a broken leather bracelet, a folded animal rescue badge, with the word volunteer, fading away a photo of a much younger Keanu, sitting beside the wolf cub, smiling in a way Sandra had never seen before. Not the smile of an actor, not the smile of a public figure, but the smile of someone who still believed life could be healed. Sandra touched the picture, her hand shaking slightly. You were just a kid, she said. Keanu nodded. I was lost. Life was hard. People did not care about me. I came here because the animals did not ask questions. They just needed care. And I needed purpose. The old woman added, he lived here for almost 3 months. Slept in the shelter. Fixed broken fences. Carried animals on his back. He never asked for food, payment, or comfort. Keanu smiled faintly. I was just trying to feel useful. Sandra looked at the box again, then at the broken bracelet. Why did you leave this behind? Keanu hesitated for the first time since morning. Because I was not ready to take it with me, he said. I felt I did not deserve to carry something that came from kindness while I was still learning how to live with my own pain. Sandra's voice softened. And now, Keanu looked at the wolf, breathing peacefully. Now I think it is time to remember who I used to be before the world decided who I should be. That line hit Sandra like a quiet storm. It was not just about him. It was about every person who forgets the part of themselves that was once pure, hopeful, unbroken. She sat down beside him. Keanu, she said, why did you never tell anyone about this place? Not even me. Keanu looked at her with calm eyes. Because some things lose meaning when you speak them out loud. Silence protects the truth. The old woman nodded. He understood something most people do not. That kindness becomes weaker when it expects a witness. There was no applause in the room, no emotional music, just reality. Raw, unedited, cleaner than anything fame ever gave. But the story was not done yet, because just when the air felt still, the ranger entered again, this time with a different expression. Not calm, not casual. Something tense. I need to tell you both something, he said. Keanu stood up slowly. What is it? The ranger took a breath. The wolf did not come from the forest near the set. It traveled from the far side of the reserve, over 20 miles away, through roads, through fields. That is not random. It was searching for something. Sandra frowned. Searching for what? The ranger looked straight at Keanu. You. A cold silence filled the room. But that is not the only thing, he continued. On its leg we found a mark. Not from a trap. From a human-made device. Someone tried to keep it contained. Someone captured it. Keanu's expression darkened. Why would anyone do that? The ranger's voice dropped lower. Because someone knew what this wolf was. And someone wanted to use it. Sandra's stomach tightened. Use it for what? The ranger looked at her, then said slowly, to reach him. Sandra turned to Keanu. What does that mean? Keanu exhaled slowly, eyes lowering. It means this is not just a story about the past anymore. Someone brought the past back on purpose. And that was when Sandra finally understood. The wolf returning was not fate. It was a message, but they still didn't know who sent it, or why. And the truth, when revealed, would change everything, not just about the wolf, not just about Keanu, but about something much bigger than anyone expected. Something that would test the meaning of kindness itself. The air in the rescue center changed the moment the ranger said those words. Everything that had felt emotional now felt unsettling. The wolf was no longer just a survivor. It was a sign, a warning, a message. Sandra looked at Keanu, trying to understand the fear behind his calm eyes. "Someone used the wolf to reach you?" she asked. Keanu nodded slowly. "Someone who knows my past. Someone who knows this place matters to me," the ranger added. The tracking mark on its leg was not for hunting. It was a locator. Someone wanted to follow the wolf. Someone wanted it to lead them here. Sandra felt a chill. "But why? What do they want from you?" Keanu took a breath, then said something he had not said before. "Because I was not just a volunteer here. I was hiding." Sandra stared at him, confused. "Hiding from what?" Keanu looked at the wolf, then at the old woman, then at the bracelet in the box. "Before I found this place, I was broken. I left the world because the world had stopped feeling safe, and someone from my past did not want me the way I became. They wanted control over who I should be, and when they lost it, they went looking for ways to find me again." The room fell into silence. Sandra's voice softened. "So the wolf was not just returning to you. It was being used to pull you out." Keanu nodded once. "Yes." The old woman placed a gentle hand on his arm. "But you are not that lost boy anymore. You are stronger now, and you came back by choice." Sandra kneeled beside the wolf and whispered, "You did not just survive. You carried a message and came to the only person you trusted." Keanu watched her, grateful for the way she understood without judgment. The ranger spoke again. "We need to find out who is tracking this animal. It is not safe for the wolf or for you." Keanu's voice was steady. "Then we protect both. We start here. We do not let kindness be turned into a weakness." Sandra nodded firmly. "We stand with you." The wolf shifted slightly, breathing slow but calmer, as if it understood that it was safe again. Not because it was strong, but because someone cared enough to stand between danger and innocence. Keanu picked up the old bracelet from the box and wrapped it around his wrist. It was worn, but it still fit. "Maybe it is time to finish what I ran from," he said quietly. Sandra's eyes softened. "And you won't face it alone this time." The ranger walked toward the door. "I will find who marked the wolf, but you both need to decide what you are ready to confront." Keanu looked at the wolf, then at Sandra. "I already decided the moment I stepped in front of it." Sandra nodded, "And I decided the moment I followed you here." There was no speech. No dramatic music, just a quiet understanding, a promise that whatever came next, they would face it not with fear, but with the same strength that saved the wolf years ago. Because kindness was not weakness. It was a shield, and now they were about to use it. The sun was beginning to set outside the rescue center, painting the sky in soft orange light. The quiet around the building felt heavier than the night before. No one was panicking, no one was running, yet every person in that place felt the same thing. Something was coming, and it was no longer just about an injured wolf. Keanu stood near the window, watching the trees move in the wind. Sandra leaned against the wall beside him, arms crossed, eyes thoughtful. The ranger and the old woman prepared the back room, checking locks, making sure the wolf was safe. No one spoke, but everyone understood the same truth. Kindness had entered a bigger fight now, not a fight against anger, a fight against people who do not understand kindness at all. Finally, Sandra broke the silence. "Keanu," she said, "who is the person you think is behind all of this?" Keanu took a slow breath, eyes still fixed on the horizon. "Someone who used to control everything around me," he said quietly. "Someone who believed power matters more than compassion. Someone who hated that I walked away from that world and chose a different path." Sandra's voice softened. "And now they want to pull you back," Keanu nodded. "Some people think kindness is a weakness. They think if you care about something, it can be used against you. They never understand that kindness is not a soft spot. It is a choice, and choices can hold power too." Sandra watched him, realizing the story was not really about the wolf at all. It was about a man who chose compassion in a world that tried to force him into something else. Before she could speak again, the ranger walked in. "I made a call," he said. "We traced the marking device. It belongs to a private group that has been trying to capture rescued wildlife for years. They earn money by selling rare animals, But this time, they were not just tracking wildlife. They were tracking the history of the person who saved it, Sandra's voice sharpened. They wanted the wolf because they knew it would lead to Keanu. The ranger nodded. Yes, and they have been waiting. The moment that wolf was found, someone would show up eventually, either to protect it or to claim it. Keanu stepped away from the window. And now they know exactly where to find it, and me. The room fell quiet again. But then the old woman, who had said very little until now, walked forward with steady steps. "You are not alone anymore," she said. "The last time you were here, you were escaping the world. This time you returned because you were strong enough to face it, and no one who returns with kindness is ever truly hunted. They are defended." Keanu looked at her with deep gratitude. "Thank you," he said softly. Sandra added, "Whatever comes next, we face it together, and not with fear. With the thing they cannot understand," the old woman nodded. "Kindness?" "No," Sandra corrected gently. "Kindness with courage." There was a sudden knock on the front door. The ranger stepped forward cautiously. The room tensed. But when the door opened, no hunters walked in. No dangerous strangers. Just a young boy holding a small package. "Delivery for the center," the boy said. The ranger thanked him and closed the door. He opened the box slowly, unsure of what to expect. Inside was a small device. A tracking beacon. The same type that had been attached to the wolf. But now it was turned off, and attached to it was a message, handwritten on a small card with no name. The message read, "Kindness is not weak. It is dangerous to those who fear empathy, but it is protected by those who carry it." Keanu stared at the message in silence. The old woman whispered, "Someone else is watching." The ranger nodded. "And whoever sent this is telling us something." Sandra finished the thought. That the people who use cruelty are not the only ones in the world. Keanu held the card gently. It was not a threat. It was a reminder. The boy who once hid in the forest had returned not as prey, but as someone who understood that standing for kindness was never a small act. It was a rebellion against the world that tried to erase it. Keanu finally spoke. "I used to think kindness was something quiet," he said. "Something you do when no one is looking. But now I see it can be something louder, something that changes people who see it, even people you never meet." Sandra looked at the wolf resting peacefully, then back at Keanu. "So what now?" she asked. Keanu smiled softly. "Now we heal what we can, and we protect what needs protection, and we keep doing it even when no one claps," the ranger added, "and the world learns that kindness is not a weakness to exploit. It is a force to face." The old woman placed her hand over Keanu's wrist, gently touching the bracelet he had taken back. "You left this here because you thought you were not ready to carry it," she said. "But now you are." Keanu nodded. "I think I finally am." Sandra took a step closer to him, speaking quietly, but with full certainty. "You did not stand in front of me that day because I was in danger. You stood in front of me because someone needed to show the world what real strength looks like." Keanu turned toward her. She held his eyes without fear. "And now the world has seen it," she said. The wolf made a soft sound in its sleep, breathing easier than before. The kind of peace that arrives only when safety is finally real. The kind of peace that comes from knowing someone cared. The kind of peace that proves kindness. Travels.kindness returns, kindness protects, and kindness remembers. Keanu took one last look around the shelter, then whispered almost to himself, "No act of kindness is ever lost." Sandra finished the sentence beside him. "Not even in the wild," and that was the ending no script could have written. Not dramatic, not loud, just human and unforgettable.